Well, hello there, it's Morgan here, and welcome to today's episode, which is for the one who may be struggling with focusing on the bigger picture. So, focusing on the bigger picture, focusing on the larger picture, that's something that gets said a lot. It's something that I personally say a lot. However, there are areas in my life where that is just really hard to do. And I have a very hard time zooming out and trying to see some larger thing. And what I'm kind of arguing in this episode through just my personal experience, but also some other things that I've read, and I just want to share those with you, is that maybe, we don't always need to focus on the larger picture. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that. And I have to tell you a little bit of where I've been and what I've been kind of dealing with to arrive at this. So one of the most common questions that I get about the work that I do is why and also how do I share my work so often? And I'm also asked some variation of this. Why don't I just work on a larger essay or a video or some larger body of work and just post weekly or monthly instead of trying to do all the little bits every day? So the short answer is that I've tried that, but it just doesn't work for me. And breaking down what I'm doing into smaller pieces just feels more natural. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that I'm autistic and I have ADHD. So this can be really difficult though, because I do also have this fear that I'm bothering people with my work by not doing a collective essay every week or every month. I really wish that was something that felt natural for me to do. And as a result of this, I've considered sharing less many times because I fear clogging people's feeds or taking up too much space. And I get very insecure about sharing in this way, even though it feels natural to me. However, there has been an image that has really helped me find peace amidst all of this, and that is the image of a paintbrush. And I want to just share with you a little bit of why that image has been valuable to me. So I came across this quote by African American sculptor Augusta Savage, and it just really struck a chord with me while I was researching her work some time back. And she said, "I have created nothing really beautiful, really lasting. But if I can inspire one of these youngsters to develop the talent I know they possess, then my monument will be in their work." And this quote holds a special significance to me because in studying Augusta Savage, I found out that despite being the only Black woman commissioned by the World Fair, when she was a part of the World Fair in 1939, her work was actually destroyed after the fact. And if you just Google Augusta Savage and you see the work that she created, the idea that it was just discarded is just so heartbreaking to me. And to think of her saying in regard to her students that she would hope that her work would live on through them, that just resonated with me so much because she wasn't talking about her work living on even through just one special student that she was working with and was like, this will be the student that comes after me. It was about the community of students that she was working with and teaching, and her work living on through them. So even just the plurality of that was so impactful for me hearing that, because it just helped me reframe this idea of work needing to always be about a product, the final product, and how a work is connected to other people who are working through things in their own life, even if they're not artists. So one thing that I've thought about is, I'm like, well, I don't have any students right now. However, I do hope that people learn something from my work. And what I hope they learn from my work, a lot of times, is just to be able to take a moment to breathe throughout their day, even if it's just for a few seconds, and to learn how to carve out more space for that, even if it's just for a few minutes. And for me, that is what the work is about. And I may paint something that ends up on a wall or in a book or in some kind of collection. However, on a day-to-day basis, if I'm not able to step out of that and think about the larger picture, it doesn't mean that I'm not creating meaningful work. It doesn't mean that I am just missing the mark because I can't focus on some big picture. So when it comes to this image of a paintbrush, it comes from a place of I'm not at all skilled in sculpture like Augusta Savage was. I don't work with clay or plaster or marble or anything like that. However, I do know that when it comes to tools that I do use, such as a paintbrush, I can allow that to become a symbolic reminder of the process and let it be a reminder of how I can return to that process every single day. And I can let those little things, those little brush strokes have an impact even in the smallest ways. And I don't have to see the larger picture. And of course, there are times where these ideas, these things that I work on, they do become larger things. They become books. They become a part of larger collections. However, even when I'm working on those, I have never put anything out there on a large scale that I wasn't working with an art director and an editor, someone else who was there with me, helping me guide it to the finish line. That part is not something that I personally feel like I am equipped to do on my own. That's just not how my brain works. I need help to figure out how to turn something into a collection. So my work that I do is in the little pieces every single day. And that's why I do small podcast episodes. I try to do once a week, 45-minute episode. And it's not to say that I just absolutely can't do it, because I can. I can go and speak at an event for 45 minutes. I've done that many times before and I can do it. However, what I'm talking about is the day-to-day, just unsettling feeling that sometimes arises from that pressure of feeling like, well, I'm not focusing enough. And that's really bad because I must be taking up other people's time, or I must be, to use some business language here, saturating the market. And I kind of have some feelings about that phrase, because I think that while it does have its applications in certain contexts, I think it does end up getting into other spheres in which it does not apply. And I think that is true of the creative process. I think that even when it comes to a notebook that we have in our house, that is ours, even just feeling like we're allowed to just put whatever we want on those pages, we're allowed to do that. Some time ago, I even did this on a live stream where I was showing one of my journals. And I think someone had mentioned struggling with filling out a journal. They were like, oh, I buy journals, but I don't end up using them. So I took an ink pen and I just started scribbling all across the page, the front page of the journal. And I just went all around the lines and I just made my own version of it. And some people are like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you would do that. But what I was trying to illustrate, and this is something that I tried to do in my life, what I was trying to illustrate is taking that moment to just get out of this idea that a journal needs to be a certain thing and that I have to tell a certain story in a certain way within these pages. And even just that slight shift of just going outside of the lines on the first page, it can make a huge difference. So going back to the paintbrush, what I'm seeking to do is to look at the paintbrush as a form of art itself, and not just seeing the paintbrush as a means to get to the canvas, but actually allowing myself to see the canvas as a means to make a larger body of work with my life. And sometimes that may end up looking like a final product of some sort, but a lot of times it might just look like me being present to my life, and I just happen to have a paintbrush in my hand. And what I'm starting to see And I don't think that everyone will agree with me on this, and I don't think that everyone has to, and I certainly don't think other people have to have it as a part of their creative practice. But what I've started to see is that the final pieces that I do make are actually just brushstrokes. Even if I spent hours on them, I'm like, that's just one brushstroke within a larger canvas of work that I'm making within my life that I'm not going to see until the end of my life. And to be completely honest, if I ever even see it, a lot of times when you look at an artist's work after the artist is no longer here, it's somebody else that's coming back later on and showing their work. Oh, here's the work they were doing in the 50s and then the 60s and then the 70s. And it's somebody else that's coming along and showing the themes within the decades of that artist's life. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not here to do that. I am done trying to stress myself out, trying to do all that in real time. If somebody wants to come along and work with me and we can work together to edit something together and create some kind of collection, then that just sounds amazing. Let's give it a try. But in the meantime, I am not going to put all that pressure on myself to try to always identify what the larger picture is. And I find this to be so important because I really do care about what I share, and I care about how I share it. And I'm not just talking about art, I'm just talking about in life in general. And I can tend to feel like, oh, I guess I was talking too much, or I guess I said too much, or I guess I'm taking up too much space in that area and I need to kind of back out. And a lot of times when I'm asking that, it's honestly just fine. And I personally could really truly learn from just saying, you know what, I'm just not going to worry about that. I'm just focused on being who I am, and I happen to have a paintbrush in my hand. I happen to be speaking right now. I happen to be doing this or doing that, and maybe that's okay. So if you, like me, are struggling with focusing on that bigger picture, I just want to invite you to join me in looking around in life and exploring how maybe there's room to just not even worry about it. Maybe there's room to say, you know what? I don't actually know why I'm working on this. I'm just curious about it. I'm having some fun with it. And maybe I'll see what it's a part of later. So, of course, we can't do that in every area of life, but we can find spaces to do that so that we feel free to breathe without constantly having to worry about how it all fits into a bigger picture. So the question that I want to leave you with today is this: have you ever felt like you were bothering people with your process? And if so, where can you create space to engage in your process more freely? So maybe for you, that is just starting with a journal where you scribble on the first page intentionally, so it serves as a visual reminder that you're allowed to do that, even though it doesn't feel like you're allowed to do that. Or maybe it's just starting a blog that doesn't have your name on it, where you're just sharing all kinds of random things that you're interested in. Maybe it's recording voice memos for yourself, but not putting pressure on yourself to transcribe them or even title them. Just turning on the recording and like, yeah, I just let myself talk for 10 minutes. And I just let that be. There's one that my 3-year-old reminded me of the other day that was very interesting to me, and I ended up doing it myself. He's figured out how to take photos, and he was just clicking and clicking and clicking, and it was on an iPad, and he was just clicking, just taking photos of just the floor, like 40 photos. And at first, it's just kind of a lot to hear, that sound going off 40 times of like photos of the floor. And I was like, you know what? This is sort of like a way of saying, yeah, why do I carefully think about every photo that I'm taking? It's not like it's a actual film camera that I'm concerned about the amount of film that I have. It's like, yes, it's taking up space on my phone, but we can just delete it later. It's not, is it really that big of a deal? And just identifying those little moments of like, wait a minute, is that even that big of a deal? Maybe I don't have to think about the larger picture for every little tiny thing. Maybe there's room to just free myself up just a little bit. So, yeah, I'll repeat that question one more time just so you have it. Have you ever felt like you are bothering people with your process? And where can you create space to engage in your process more fully? Thank you so much for listening. I'm Morgan Harper Nichols.